another episode of 10xMarketer podcast. Today I have Julia Riml with us. She is a seasoned PPC expert and comes with around 10 years of experience. She's director of new business at Pack Ace Berlin. We are discussing something very important fundamentally, how your brand is mentioned in AI tools. What is the share of voice you have as a brand? Where and in what context your brand is mentioned? You as a brand, what kind of control do you have? Is there at all? And what you can do about it to improve your share of voice or improve the way it is mentioned on AI search engines. AI search engines like ChatGPT search are expected to take around 20-25% of the overall search traffic in next 1 and 1.5 years. And you as a brand, it is very important for you to understand this context and try to optimize your presence as much as possible. Yulia and her team have worked extensively on a report. They monitored few brands' presence on AI tools, and she shared some practical learnings and strategies that you can use as a brand owner while monitoring your brand. So let's head into the episode and listen to what Yulia has to share. Before that, can I request you all to subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast? We keep bringing guests like Julia and keep sharing some great insights on marketing.
Thank you for having me, first of all. I'm Julia Riml. I'm Director New Business at Peak Ace. We're a digital marketing agency headquartered in Berlin, but we do international digital marketing. So, yeah, I'm super, super excited to be here.
Great. And so you have been quite vocal about the AI brand monitoring, and I've seen some of your posts, and that's what made me interested in talking to you. So let's start with the relevance of AI brand monitoring, why you think this is very relevant and what it is. How do you define brand monitoring with AI?
Mm. So AI brand monitoring is basically the process of analyzing how often and in what kind of context a brand is mentioned within AI chatbots or AI driven platforms like ChatGPT, for example. It sort of tracks a brand's share of voice in AI generated conversations. And I really think this is becoming an increasingly important topic because AI chatbots really influence consumer decisions because millions and millions of people use AI chatbots every day. I think especially ChatGPT is interesting because they are clearly leading the pack with now 3.79 billion visitors as of November 2024, according to similar web data. And it's basically already surpassed Bing in March 2023, which just goes to show how big ChatGPT has become in a very, very short time span. It only launched in November 2022. And in those 2 years, basically, it's completely overtaken some of the traditional search engines like Bing. And so that's why I think it's definitely an important topic to talk about. That's why I've been talking about it very much, I would say.
Awesome. So, if you see, there are a lot of tools that are listening to the brand conversation, and then there are people who collate everything and put it in a dashboard. Brands have been already listening to the conversation that is happening on social media in past. So, if we talk about AI brand monitoring, one is, let's say you already have some conversation happening about your brand, and you're monitoring it. So how does brand monitoring with AI different from what is the traditional monitoring we have already seen so far and the ORM activity that brands generally do?
Mm. Yeah, so you explained it perfectly. I guess traditional brand monitoring typically focuses on sort of social media mentions, reviews, search engine rankings, where in contrast, AI brand monitoring evaluates how often an AI chatbot specifically is recommending a brand, and this is quite different in terms of how you get to that data because when you talk about social media mentions, things like this is static information that's traditional web content that's out there for people to see and find. Whereas with an AI chatbot, an answer is generated in the moment, in real time to a user. So it's far from static information. And that makes it quite challenging and one of the reasons why it was quite difficult for people to understand okay what may be the impact of AI on my brand. That's why we really wanted to solve this topic and do specifically an AI brand monitoring to come up with a way to analyze these conversations at scale.
Okay, so I think you have been putting a significant effort in this direction. I have seen some posts coming from you talking about the brand monitoring with AI tools. What really inspired you to focus in this area? Is this something big that you see coming, or it's just a passing fad that made you interested in the overall conversation?
Yeah, definitely not the second. It's definitely going to be a huge trend. I mean, I think at Peak Ace, we've pretty much been talking about AI and its huge impact on the industry the moment it sort of started kicking off 2 years ago. And yeah, just monitoring what's happening in this space closely and seeing how not only as marketers, but also consumers are using AI these days really made us think into this direction because obviously we kind of want to help brands with their digital marketing usually. So it made us think, okay, this is kind of yeah, this black box. How are people finding brands through ChatGPT? And we notice people actually now more and more talking about, hey, people have been telling me they found my company through a ChatGPT, and this has happened to us as well. That we were recommended, and this was brought up in a sales call. So it's really, really interesting, and it's sort of just picking up. But I think it's gonna be one of the main future platforms to look at. I think it's still in the process of getting there, but it's definitely going to be a huge challenger to the likes of Google and so on. And that's why we really focused on this topic now, because we think this is an area that not many companies have explored yet, of how you can analyze it and how you can help customers understand this sort of field better. So that's why I think we chose it. And I'd like to quote Gartner on this, because they predict that by 2026, traditional search engine volume will drop 25%, with search marketing losing market share to AI chatbots and other virtual agents. And I mean, 2026 isn't that far away, I would say. And I have a feeling this might happen faster than we think. So that's why it's definitely a huge trend that we need to watch.
Great. So let's say I run a company and I want to monitor my brand, how the conversation is happening. One is I can do my search, own search with brand name and other topics. But that is not what AI might be showing about me. And there's no definite way of looking at all the conversation that is happening and where
Mm.
my name is mentioned. So is there any methodology? Is there any technique using which I, as a brand owner or a business owner or a marketing person, look at it and then maybe devise some plan to take care of how it is mentioned?
Yeah. So it's definitely not possible, obviously, to monitor private conversations that are happening within a generative AI chatbot tool. So we can't really monitor that. But of course, we just kind of came up with a methodology to monitor it. So what we do is that we basically generate a lot of prompts that mimic common consumer questions or queries to trigger the AI response, and then we collect all those responses and capture the mentions of brands, features, attributes, whatever. Because of course, there's also more things being talked about the AI, not just a brand. And then we go ahead and we do entity recognition to just extract the brand names and other information. And then we structure this data so we can calculate a share of voice metric, just to come up with basically, okay, how many brands were mentioned, how often were they mentioned, on what sort of position were they mentioned usually in the conversation. And then you can kind of compare yourself to competitors. So it's like a really scalable solution, because when you yourself are prompting ChatGPT, for example, you can obviously think about a prompt potentially, like how, yeah, what sort of tools do you recommend to use for this and this problem, then it might give you a few recommendations, but that's just one prompt. And doing this obviously like thousands to thousands of times, that's basically what we are trying to imitate with the process. And yeah, it's giving a really great sort of insight into how well represented certain brands are, and you can find out how represented your brand is, or we can look at industries in general. So we've done a few different studies already, for example, about the smart ring sector, or recently I've looked at the payment provider sector, and you get some super interesting insights as well. And for every sector, you kind of can analyze some different angles, maybe more what kind of target audiences, how a different target audience would prompt, because then we generate different prompts. How would this target audience look for information? And then you see, okay, maybe then other brands are recommended more versus another, or maybe different USPs. You can search for specific smart rings for innovation, which is the most innovative smart ring, then it might suggest you a different brand than before. So all those sort of small differences we can look at, and that's how we do it technically.
So this makes me curious because I come from an SEO background, and
Mhm.
that is where my thinking will go straightforward. Is the chat GPT response or any other AI tool response differ from location to location? Let's say I'm searching from India and you're searching from Berlin. Would there be a difference in response? Will it be localized without me mentioning a location? That is one. Are there any other insights like certain technology? Is it biased about something other or the regular brands that you see? What kind of conversation where the brands are often mentioned or should be monitoring? Is there a pattern that you are able to establish, or are there any significant insights that brands should take care at this moment?
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, the location part that you mentioned is definitely a thing. I think you notice when speaking to ChatGPT yourself that it will pick up on your location without you specifically mentioning it. So that is definitely a factor to take into account when we do the analysis. Because if we just don't give it context, very often it focuses on the US. That's definitely something we've seen, and it obviously when you then it depends a little bit on the language. The moment you give it a language, then it kind of just guesses the location from that, I would say. But when you don't give it a location hint, or you are in English, then it definitely focuses on the US. That's something we have noticed. But in general, I think from SEO, it's definitely the SEO community that is also the most interesting in the most interested in the topic when we spoke about it, because it kind of goes quite close to come up or to be visible in an LLM. It kind of is quite close to technical SEO, like traditional technical SEO. There's similar things you have to do as a brand, and that's why I think especially that community is showing that much interest, because you there's many things. I mean, we can go more in depth into the topic, but there's many things you can do to show up better within LLMs essentially that are similar to traditional SEO.
Okay, so I think especially in the chat GPT mentions or chat GPT feed, what I have seen increasingly, it's more dependent on Bing than Google for its local indexing, at least. If I do a location specific query, I can see some of the top 10 results also mentioned in chat GPT. Is this the common pattern?
I know that there has been some people doing a bit more research into the sort of how similar it is to traditional organic results versus what they get shown in an AI overview on Google or in ChatGPT. And it doesn't directly correlate. It seems like there's definitely differences, but that is also, I think, down to the fact that an LLM is not only it's not retrieving information only in real time with RAG, so with RAG. I think it's because also a generative AI also has a foundational large language model as a baseline input, and that is trained on static data sets that yeah, there's quite a lot of things that they are trained on. And for example, a big part is Common Crawl that's in there, but also books, Wikipedia, things like that, that have been taken into foundational training data for GPT-3 as a large language model, for example. And so we know that an LLM doesn't only pull data like a search engine does, but it kind of combines both this foundational training data with the RAG information to kind of improve its answers and make it more current, because otherwise we would always, you will maybe remember when ChatGPT launched, it was always looking, there was only the training data it was quoting, and then it always said, okay, I can't give you up to date information. Now this is possible because it does use similar methodologies to a search engine. But yeah, so there's
But
two factors that are improving it.
even then, can it pick up the current topic, like the everything that is happening in the news? If certain brand is getting a positive or negative mention in the news, can it pick the hint and start mentioning from there?
It can definitely pick that up, but I think it's probably needs to be happening quite a lot for it to do pick it up. But I think it will definitely help you if you are um, represented positively in large media and large news, because then it does pick up on you as an authoritative source, and that yeah, that you're to be trusted, because it also always focuses on like community moderated sites. I think that's something that's very interesting about it. For example, Wikipedia, Reddit, these sort of platforms have become much more important because they know they are moderated, so there's sort of a level of security over it, over the content that's there, and how information is moderated. But at the same time, there's real users giving their opinions and views, for example on Reddit. So if there's, so for the GPT-3 training data, that was also actually a part of the training data, because it took web text 2 as a part of it. And there in there is basically, I think, yeah, Reddit content with 3 or more upvotes. I mean, they obviously sanitize the data to only, so you can't really cheat your way into it. I think that's what most most people would obviously try and do, and now go spam Reddit and stuff. That's not the solution here. I think that's important to say. But yeah, you're definitely gonna have a higher chance the more positively represented your brand is in many different online formats like Reddit, Wikipedia, news and media website, even books. If you can get mentioned in books, I mean, that's maybe not possible for every brand, but it will definitely help you as part of the foundational training data. But that is obviously for future training, for the future training of future large language models, maybe GPT-5 or whatever it will be called for ChatGPT, is where this might be taken into account.
Great. So I think the SEO folks must be listening to you attentively and looking at the ways to get their brand mentioned on ChatGPT and other tools. With your study, when you published it on LinkedIn and other, you have been talking about in different conferences as well. From the title point of view, who has shown the most interest other than SEOs? SEOs, I know definitely would be
Mhm.
interested. I'm an SEO and I'm very interested in this. But other than
Yeah.
SEO, is there anyone else talking about it?
Yeah, I think definitely SEO the biggest by far, but there's definitely C-level that's interested in it, because they're always kind of interested how their brand is represented, but also brand managers, like people that are maybe more in brand marketing, or people that are very focused on strategy, digital marketing strategy. These kind of profiles showed the most engagement, I would say, in the conferences and also on LinkedIn. I mean, on when Bastian, our CEO, posted about the brand monitoring, the whole SEO community came and wanted to hear and see about the white paper. They definitely came the strongest, I would say. But yeah, there's quite a few different audiences
And
in.
are people, when they're reaching out to you, especially the C-suite or the business owners, are they also concerned about how they personally being mentioned on AI tools, because personal brand may also be impacted because of that.
That's a very good point. That's not happened too much, those conversations, but I think it's definitely one to consider, because yeah, the personal brands are definitely a big part as well, and it's definitely recommending people as well. And I have seen some someone commented under one of my posts, for example, yeah, hey, look, I'm being recommended. That's awesome. He was one of the first ones to request a white paper, so that's really cool. He shared his little success there, so that was nice.
That's awesome. Even I have been searching for my name and I have to train ChatGPT to actually mention it correctly.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm
That's
still
nice.
not there. But it's good to know that the personal brand might also be getting impacted, and people have to be monitoring the conversation that is happening on the AI tools about them. But
Yeah,
right now, it's not taking any of the social media data, right? Other
no,
than maybe Reddit, or you don't know
um,
anything about whether it is taking Facebook, Twitter, or any other
no.
social sites.
I think so far from GPT-3, we know that it wasn't in the training data, but they don't always like publish exactly what was in the training data. But we know for GPT-3 what was in there, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely not normal social, because that's so much risk for misinformation. I think on
Mm-hmm.
social networks, I think that's probably one of the reasons why that is not in there, and that's why they focus more on moderated sources like Wikipedia and Reddit. But yeah, maybe it will happen in the future that they use it, but I don't see it's probably very challenging to sanitize the data, and use that. Yeah, I think that would probably
How
be it.
about the information on YouTube? That is also not taken into account.
Oh, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not an SEO myself. All this information, I really like want to shout out one person where I've learned a lot about it, which is Malte Landwehr. He's one of my favorites that I follow in this space, and he is an SEO for many years, and he's been posting some great blog posts, kind of explaining some of the nuggets that I've explained now. I think most of that information I got from him. So yeah, I think that's probably a good source to check when you're wondering about how to optimize for LLMs, to show up in LLMs more.
Okay, so you have been trying to answer my next question, but I'll bring it again.
Mhm.
Is there any way, or are there any guide or topics or step by step process that any brand can follow to get improved on whatever is mentioned on their chat GPT, Gemini, Claude, or anywhere else? Are there any steps that I can personally take for my brand?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the because of these things that I started touching on, that obviously there's this foundational large language model underneath, and then RAG, which is more similar to traditional technical SEO topics. So there's similar recommendations in there that you would hear from SEOs. So keeping your page load times low, rendering speed as short as possible, no JavaScript dependencies, but then also how you structure your content on your website. So having like text-rich content, or even providing content summaries at the top or at the bottom of a page, because that might enhance the scannability for an AI to get that information quickly. And then what I already touched on, like presence on key platforms like database websites or community sites. So database websites, if you think of Crunchbase, Yelp, IMDb, or community sites like Reddit, Quora, Wikipedia, which is more about credibility and visibility. And then I think earned media, so just media coverage, like positive media coverage, will definitely help you. I've already said that as well, and books, if you can get mentioned in books. So a lot of those are the recommendations that are currently out there for improving your visibility, but it's a very new field, so it has to be seen what helps the most. But I think if you do all of those things, I think you would definitely be be on the right course, so to say.
So, by what you have mentioned so far, it looks like it's more skewed in favor of big brands who can afford big PR, getting mentioned on Wikipedia and
Hello.
doing everything else. Hi, welcome.
There's my cat visitor. Sorry.
That's awesome. She also will be mentioned on ChatGPT for sure.
Ooh, he's pressing something. Sorry. Sorry. There
Hi,
you
welcome.
go.
So, let me repeat my question. Thank you for the distraction, Mr. Cat. Uh, okay, she's here again.
He's still sitting next to me, but it's okay. He's sat down. So
Great.
you can.
So, hope he can let me focus on the question. And okay, so so far, it looks like it's skewed in favor of big brands who can afford maybe getting big budget PR mentioned on big news publications, and also maybe create a Wikipedia page or get that kind of authority which makes them picked up by the AI chatbot tools. The traditional SEO focus, which is getting more backlinks and authoritative website, domain authority, everything else is taking backstage as of now because this is completely a new field and evolving field.
Mhm.
But is it possible for a smaller brand like yours and ours to actually impact what is being talked about on AI chatbot tool about us? And are there any low budget activities or economical activities that brands can perform? Because getting mentioned in New York Times or getting mentioned in a book is not possible for everyone.
Yeah, that's a very good question because I think there's definitely some skewing to larger brands and more prominent brands, especially the more general you prompt, the more large brands will be in the highest share of voice. You can definitely see that it kind of reflects what you think of as some of the first brands is usually what it will tell you. So it kind of reflects real life, I guess. But for smaller brands, I think it's still very much possible to show up if you are focusing on your specific niche and your specific niche is searching. I think there will still be a chance for you to show up. So like what I have seen, for example, is that for like the payment provider research that we've done, of course, there's like the likes of PayPal, Stripe, and Square always in the first three spots. That's kind of large brands. They are very well known. But then when you ask for specific target audience segments and you prompt more out of the view of a specific niche, hey, for example, we are a subscription based company or SaaS based company, and then it might show different brands and smaller brands as well. Or I looked, for example, as part of a more out of the perspective of an NGO, and then there were specific on spot four. There was a company called DonorBox, for example, specifically for fundraising, donations, like a payment provider for those specific kinds of things. So there is a chance, I think, to really tune in your niche and in your specific target segment, and still be shown as one of the recommendations. And the more specific you are and the more specific niche you have, I think the easier it will be for sure. But yeah, I think that's one tip I could see based on the insights I have seen so far.
Okay, so in your study so far, is there any correlation or is there any data about how much brand mention happened, and did that convert into some jump in the organic traffic to that brand or coming directly from the source mentioned in ChatGPT? Are there any study or there is any proven data? And the second follow up question on the same topic is, are there any measurement of ROI possible right now about AI brand monitoring? And I mean, is there any tool or is there any tool you see in future?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely. So in terms of the, we haven't done a specific study for a specific brand where we looked at the whole funnel, then also looking at their analytics data. But I know that there's definitely, especially now since ChatGPT launched the search integration, it's really started putting the source quite clearly. You can notice that when you click on a link from the sources it cites, then it says source ChatGPT referral, because there was a long time where this was not the case. So now it even includes a UTM parameter for you, which is really nice, and definitely helps with analyzing the traffic. And for all the other tools besides ChatGPT, I know that you generally can look at referral traffic. So if you look at your referral traffic, maybe create some channel groupings specific for those specific AI chatbots, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT, then you can monitor it closely. And I think some people have done that and they have seen more and more traffic coming through there. So it's really picking up lately. But I definitely would want to look at into that for one of our clients, as one of the next steps would be really, really interesting.
So for an SEO, it's kind of a nightmare because so far I've been only focused on Google as a search engine. Now I will have
Yeah.
6 or 7 search engines to focus on,
Yeah.
and that makes it a tiresome job for me.
Yeah.
Now, based on whatever insights we have gathered so far, you have shared some steps that brands can take, and I feel that they are more for the bigger brands and smaller brands. There is no definite answer right now. Let's say I start focusing on improving my maybe Bing indexing, getting more visibility on Bing, and if at all possible, get a Wikipedia for my brand. Would it be possible for me to get my whatever is mentioned about me updated? I mean, can I update that conversation in LLM or the training data? Because I don't have access to that. Even if it is negatively mentioned, can a brand intervene and say that no, it's not right, I want to change it?
Yeah, I think if you just continue putting a lot of high quality content out, I think because it now pulls in current information as well, I think it does help. So you should be focusing on that, no matter if small or big brand. I think that goes for everyone and will help everyone. But yeah, I think you can't really directly change the training data from an old model. That won't be a possibility, but at least you can influence what's in the current web and how it talks about you in that respect.
Okay, and making my own searches and giving some information about myself to chat gpt won't help at all, right? That's a private conversation, they're not supposed to
Yeah,
track it.
yeah. I mean, they do obviously monitor it for training purposes a little bit, just to improve their outputs. But I don't think that it's gonna help you much. If it might just then start showing it to you because it thinks you really want this shown to you,
Yeah.
so you're training it for yourself. I
So
think
in my
that's what
universe,
you
my
might be
brand is
doing.
mentioned and I can be happy about it, but
Yeah,
the world might not be
exactly.
seeing it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I would imagine it to do. But of course, I'm not an AI engineer. I can't look behind OpenAI's doors. But yeah, that's what I would imagine it would do more. But that's why it's always just a guideline. Also, all the AI brand monitoring, the analysis we do, of course, people, when they have their ChatGPT with all their memories and all the nuances in there, they will probably still get sometimes different results than what we can even pull from a general perspective. And that's gonna remain a challenge. No one will be ever, I think, able to do it, except these platforms will give us the data, which we don't know if that will ever
Yeah,
happen. But I mean, Google many, many years ago also said, for example, they would never do advertising, and look what they're doing now. So maybe things will change. Who knows? We gotta see and watch the
true.
space.
And do you see sponsored ads coming soon inside ChatGPT? Is there a possibility like that?
I think for ChatGPT, definitely not in the near future, because Sam Altman has a very clear stance of no ads so far. So he's really trying to go more the subscription route. as I said, I mean, also Google had a, I have seen a post the other day very nicely with like how Google stated on literally the homepage back in the day, Google will never will never advertise and to do all kinds of things. It's supposed to be for information and yeah, see how things have changed. So yeah, I do have the feeling there will be change. I mean, Perplexity, for example, they were very open about that they will provide ads at some point from the get go, which I think is much more realistic in terms of business model. But we're to be to be seen what happens in this space and when.
Okay, so I think we are towards the conclusion of our discussion. Are there any specific tips that you want to share with, especially the smaller brand owners or SEO folks who are closely monitoring, that they can follow and improve their brand mention on AI tools?
I mean, I think besides the things I already mentioned, I think it's just already taking into account that this is a potential future marketing channel that is an emerging marketing channel. I think it's super important. So just consider it, look into it, monitor. If you can invest in monitoring, then I would definitely recommend that because it will help you see if your efforts are doing anything or not. I think that's the great part about it. And yeah, I think branding has never been as important now considering the rise of AI. So I would really recommend everyone trying to think and invest more into their brand, not just, I mean, I don't mean from an organic point of view, I actually also mean paid, just do something to improve your branding because you will stand out more as well in a list of recommendations anyway if people know about your brand better. I think that's always been important, but it's becoming more and more important. And I've actually seen a graph recently where I've used it in one of my conference talks where um, creative is kind of one of those things in campaigns that is super important, but actually brand is also super important. It's in a study from 2023, it made up 21% of the incremental contribution to sales. And that has actually increased by 6% compared to 2017. So brand is becoming more and more important. And I think in AI conversations, it will only help you to have a strong brand. So I think that is one thing I didn't talk so much about yet. I talked more about all these technical things that the SEO will community will like, but I think there's so much more to it than just the technical side of things. It's also about your branding as it is.
Yeah, I think there is a strong requirement for the brand listening tools to improve and include the AI conversations about all the brands. Like all the monitoring tool have to include that. And I think there's a strong, if anyone is listening, there's a very, very strong need to create a centralized dashboard that can monitor across all the AI chatbot tools because there are so many, it's not possible for any brand to do it manually. And with AI coming, everyone is already becoming lazy. So it's very difficult even more.
Yeah, I mean, we can help at least with the ChatGPT monitoring. We have the solution. So if anyone's interested, of course, you can speak to us. We'd happily get you a report over or do an ongoing monitoring. But yeah, we don't, for example, have all the chatbots in there yet. But it's important to say that in terms of size and traffic volumes, ChatGPT is the main one to watch right now. Perplexity is growing at quite an impressive rate. I'm like literally watching visitor numbers month over month, and but still it's like super small compared to ChatGPT. It's like way smaller. So if you watch what happens with ChatGPT, you're already doing a very big right step in the right direction, I would say. So yeah.
Okay, so I think that brings us to the concluding of this episode. It was really nice chatting with you, Julia, and definitely your insights are really helpful for my audience. Thank you guys for listening to us so far, and do make sure you subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast as guests like Julia keep coming and sharing some great insights on what is happening in marketing, PPC, SEO, content, and other areas. Thank you so much, and it was really nice having you here.
Thank you.